me in the furnace. You'll find me in the flames. 'Cause baby, I'm a phoenix, and I'm rising again. You find me in the darkness, breaking the chains. 'Cause baby, I'm a phoenix, and I'm rising again. You find me in the furnace. You'll find me in the flames. 'Cause baby, I'm a phoenix, and I'm rising again.
Oh, cool. Hey. Hey, guys. Welcome to episode 3 of Beer Talks. First, Kirby, Justin Curtis from The Pint, and we are here at Helio Basin. Super excited with Mike and Dustin.
Hey guys.
We are definitely talking about something that I know Justin is super, super excited about. It's his favorite thing in the whole world, barrel aging. We've got, woo, I know, we're so excited. We're already anticipating how the speech is going to be bad by the end of this. But we're going to muddle through it and hopefully enunciate all of our words and be
Yes.
wonderful. Based off of last week, of course, talking about lighter beers, really great seasonal stuff, we had to give a great shout out to Helio's newest. It's their lithium lager, something we carry in-house as well, as you can come over here and buy. But we wanted to kind of start that way, get a nice little palate cleanser, refreshing, and just kind of introduce you guys to the world of our fans, I guess. Hopefully you know who Helio is because they're amazing and they're super close to Central Phoenix. Welcome.
Thanks.
Welcome.
Glad to be here.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
So tell me your guys' backstory. When did you start? How did you guys come together? What was the whole idea? Why Helio Basin?
Hey, what's up, Matt?
Tell us your
Yeah,
backstory.
so Dustin and I went to undergrad together out on the East Coast, a little small school in Northwest Pennsylvania, and started homebrewing in our senior year, and got about 4 or 5 batches in, which we thought was the best beer that ever touched our lips, but
Of course.
probably was pretty rough now that we look back at it. Yeah, and then we kind of split off and went 2 different directions after undergrad, but I went into the Marines, and then Dustin went to grad school for a little bit, and then I'll go into your story, let you kind of take that, because it's fuzzy where you were at, and, like, exactly what
started
time
drinking.
frame. Yeah.
Well, that's not true. But yeah, so I went into grad school for pharmaceutical research. Left that to jump into the professional brewing world. So looked for a brewing school, found Siebel, got accepted into that program. And then right after I graduated from Siebel, I got a job in upstate New York at a brew pub. Was there for a couple of years, and then got contacted by Four Peaks, actually. This was about 10 years ago. Came out here, was brewing with them for about 3 years, and then took over as the brewmaster at Southern Tier for 4 years.
Okay.
Back in
nice.
New York, and then back out here to start this. So.
Yep.
Here, here.
Yeah.
You just were like, we have to brew together because
Yeah.
we did it in our garage. Why
Yeah,
not?
it was a long, about 9-year process from when we graduated to when we actually opened up. But it was one thing that we always kept coming back to, that we wanted to open up a brewery, and we love Phoenix, and that was our number one choice far and away. So we just went after it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, no, a lot of your culture, a lot of your beer names, and Helio Basin alone, the brewery name is all about Arizona.
Yeah.
Focus a lot on the landscapes and the different locations and stuff like that. They have really cute flight boards here. I love them. I think they're the coolest ones. The
Thank you.
state of Arizona with the little holes in it. They're just really dope. And I think I intentionally get a flight every time just so
to
that
look
I
at
can,
it, yeah.
just to have it in front of me because I think it's
It's
so
all the
cool.
same beer, though. Why?
Yeah.
I know.
One.
Well, because I like I like them all.
We had those made locally by 2 young guys actually that were leasing a shop down in Chandler.
Nice.
And so like they're made here. Our tap handles are made here.
Yeah. The metalwork around here, if you guys haven't been here, the metalwork around here is insane.
Yeah.
All the way to the urinals.
All the way to the urinal.
Oh, yeah.
The most photographed thing in
I
this
know.
place.
I remember. I think when I first met you guys, I remember you telling a story about that. That was like we had to get more people to post pictures on Yelp because it's like,
Yeah.
look up Helio Basin, and the first picture is this urinal.
It felt like one of the first couple.
I think it is too.
You
Yeah.
can't take it down. It's like
No.
I mean, it's iconic.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
great.
And yeah, we do try to do like a bunch of stuff that's Arizona centric. You know, obviously I'm from Western New York. He's from Western Pennsylvania, but we fell in love with Phoenix, you know, separately for our own reasons. And you know, so many people are transplants here.
Oh, yeah.
Which isn't a bad thing. Obviously, we are, but a lot of people try to, you know, impart their own area into Arizona. So whether it's like a Chicago steakhouse or this, like whatever the trend is where they're from, they want to bring it to Phoenix, as opposed to actually saying, hey, why are we in Phoenix in the first place? It's because this is a beautiful state. It's an
Yeah.
awesome city. So we've always been very like, you know, proactively embracing and not trying to bring us to Phoenix and Arizona, but to showcase what Arizona has.
That's awesome.
And you know, it's why we love the state.
Yeah,
Totally.
I love that. So tell us about Lithium Lager. What was the thought process of?
Ed says hi.
Oh, hey.
And Orlando says cheers.
Oh,
Orlando, cheers.
Orlando, cheers.
Can't wait to
Yeah.
get to that.
We'll be drinking yours later. Talk about the lager. Tell me, you know, just why you wanted to brew it, what we should be tasting, what we should know, all those kind of things.
It's got a really great story behind it, and actually, even talking about, you know, how our love for the state. You know, we got contacted by, you know, the new ownership group that, you know, revitalized Castle Hot Springs, which is the state's oldest luxury resort. You know, it's been around since the 1890s. A lot of people tried to get it started again throughout the 70s after a fire, and then, you know, the new ownership group that's there now was actually able to really do an amazing job bringing it back to its original glory, right down to the construction details, the masonry work, everything about it was just truly revitalizing something that's been a staple of the state. It's cool, like the phone there was 6021. That was the first area, or the first number.
Nice.
But, you know, they reached out to us and they wanted to do a beer. They at some point wanted to do a brewery up there, and they didn't really know how to go about that. So they came down here. We started talking, hit it off really well, both from, you know, the chef side, the garden side, everything, the farm that they do up there, and the ownership side. And we said, all right, let's just do a beer down here now to start with while you guys get everything going. What's really cool about there is it's a natural hot spring. But it also makes it really difficult because they wanted to use water from the hot spring, which is logistically challenging a little bit. So instead what we did was got a water profile readout, and I was able to back calculate what we had to do to get it to replicate the hot spring.
Sweet. Okay.
Which is like my science background that I get to nerd out on a little bit.
Yeah.
And we also use some water literally from the spring that we bring down. Thank you. But it has lithium in it as well, which is like a very therapeutic, like healing mineral. So we wanted something to them. We did a little sensory, did a couple of different triangle tests with different beers, kind of understood what their flavor profile that they were looking for was, designed this recipe for them. They loved it, and then we took off with it last year. They started serving it in draft, and then they wanted to get it in the cans. So this year, just a couple months ago, we did the first can run of it.
That's awesome. Well, it's definitely very clean.
Yeah.
And just, there's no, like, I don't know, a lot of times you get some of those lighter beers that you get kind of a weird, like, back taste to it. And,
Totally.
I mean, you can tell the difference when it's certain water quality and everything. And I know that's a big thing I look for in a lighter beer. It's just something that is super easy drinking and refreshing, and it doesn't feel like it's heavy or anything like that. It doesn't have like a mineral-y-ness to it.
Well, lighter
That's
beers,
beautiful.
it's hard to hide off flavors in light beers. I have OCD when it comes to cleaning in general, and like
Yeah,
meticulous.
we can tell.
like brewing.
Everything is like sparkling in here. It's awesome.
Yeah, I can't help it. And so, especially in beers, I mean, we filter all of our beers too, which is, you know, less and less common, you know, nowadays.
It is.
And it's just a personal preference, you know, for me. But I think it just, you know, it's the final step before it gets to the consumer, and you know, you get to see this nice, beautiful, bright, clear beer, which are starting to like make a comeback, which is kind of funny. You know, they're called
Yeah.
crispy something now. I don't know. But anyways,
Crispy boys.
Crispy boys.
Crispy boy.
But anyways, it's all of our beers are filtered, even the dark beers. But it just helps like have that nice, clean hop profile in there. It's like really nice and subtle. We use some Saaz hops that have like a little bit of like a lemon pepper note to them, but they're really subdued. So it's just bright, crisp, and then that little bit of like lemon note to it that kind of finishes everything off, and then leaves you ready to have another sip. So.
That's awesome.
And he doesn't usually like lager.
Yeah, I was just gonna say he was like, oh, I'm gonna do a lager, and I'm like, well, that's awesome. I'm probably not gonna drink it. Like nothing against it, just. And I'm prefacing this: I am not the brewer. Dustin is, but I have my own like, I'm like, all right, if I'm gonna drink something, it's ales 100%, lagers like. But then I tried it, and I was like, wow, son of a bitch, you did it. And so
You made one I liked.
I pretty much have a 4-pack in my fridge at all times, especially now with the weather. So I like to go hike at like night and stuff like that, and it's just that crisp, clean, and it's 5%, so it doesn't knock you on your butt, which is also nice if you're trying to hike at night.
Yeah.
It's a nice starter for us today, considering we're going to get
Especially
into
what we're diving into.
some crazy
Yeah.
stuff.
Speaking of knocking you on your
Here
ass.
we go.
Right.
Let her rip, tater chips.
So,
oh, go ahead.
go ahead.
No, you're fine. So the very first one that we're going to go for is by Founders. We're big supporters
There you go,
of
Orlando.
Founders. Hey, we're Orlando over at the Casual Pint. This is their second version of the Mas Agave. Very first one they did was it sort of to pay homage to the margarita. So it is a goza. It is a sour with sea salt and lime, and they barrel age it in tequila barrels to give it really that quality of being a margarita. And this one is their newest version. Thank you. It is grapefruit to represent the Paloma margarita. So we're going to give this a whirl. Really wanted to bring this one in so people understood that it's not just dark beers that get barrel aged. It's not just stouts. It's not just porters. It can be sours. It can be blondes. You guys have a blonde. It can be Belgians and all sorts of different things. And you and your phone today.
So popular.
So popular today.
Sorry.
No, you're fine. So I'm a huge sour fan. Obviously, I wanted to do some kind of barrel aged sour, but
Yeah, of course.
let's give this a whirl. See what we think, what we note.
Smell of grapefruit right on the nose for
Oh,
sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Now, Dustin seems to be Dustin. We talked with Brian last week. Was it last week about the hops?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
So
Yeah.
there's always the guy in the room that I can name the hops. I can name that hop. I can name. This literally is the guy that can name the hops, and I'm confident he's going to be right 99% of the time.
I don't know
So
about all that, but it's just kind of a fun thing to do to just train your palate and your sensory. And we actually just did it. What day was that?
oh yeah,
This
that's-
was like Groundhog's Day all the
Last
day.
week,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's
Yeah.
Thursday or Friday or something.
Yeah.
And it was cool. So just brought in a couple of chefs that are friends of ours and some other friends of ours that are like great with like wine and cocktails. And it was just good to do raw material sensory. So we did malt steeps, we did hop rubs and hop steeps, and just kind of like keeping yourself in check, which is really fun. But like, this is a great nose on it.
Yeah.
Holy
I
moly.
got a couple people from Founder, and Andrew and Orlando. Cheers, guys.
Cheers.
If you guys know anything about me, I'm a huge Founders fan. Founders is one of the kings, if you ask me, in barrel aging for sure. The big beers.
Totally.
Yeah.
I didn't try it yet.
This is like a
It's-
Paloma.
Yeah,
It's like-
hands down tastes like
That's
Paloma.
awesome.
Yeah, it's-
And I know they
Right?
added the grapefruit afterwards. So this was
That makes sense.
something that they did is that they started with the same base as the Mas Agave with the sea salt and the lime, barrel aged it in tequila barrels, and then once they took it out, they added the grapefruit juice in it to really have it be more prominent. And that could be something. So why? That could be a good question. What makes the decision between like an acidic or citrusy juice that you want to add to a beer? Why would you add it after or before the barrel aging? Like, what would make the difference? And had they put the grapefruit in prior to aging it?
That's a great question. When you're adding any sort of fruit juice into a barrel, there's going to be some residual yeast that's left in there. and there's going to be some sugar. Even though the grapefruit's acidic, it's sugary as well, and you might spark some sort of secondary fermentation inside of the barrel because the yeast is going to reactivate. Generally, when you're barrel aging, it's room temperature, more or less. So like they're still viable in there, and you might get activated the yeast cells that you don't want, because the ones that you do want were probably pulled out or dropped off before you even racked the barrel in the first place. So anything that's left in there that's going to see that sugar and want to get after it, you probably don't want. Even in a sour beer or a tart beer like a Goza, like you don't want that accidental sour of like, oh, now we have some stuff in there that we never wanted. So the acidity of grapefruit is amazing, but there is still sugar present. So adding it later just is kind of like controlling the process a little bit more and giving you like that great grapefruit flavor that I'm assuming they wanted, but without any of the risk.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense.
What is the percentage?
Tarts that are
9.7.
all
Yeah. Like we're getting into it.
This will get your day
right
going.
away.
All
We
right.
have water bottles all
So
set aside everywhere.
The regular Mas Agave that I had last year, I haven't had this year's, but that was definitely more tart.
Yeah.
Definitely, it was. You could feel that. Maybe I'm just maturing finally into the sours, but
I remember the first sour you ever tried. You
I know you love your sour.
yeah, I love them. Just love them. This is very, very drinkable.
It really is.
Yeah.
I could drink the hell bottle.
Yeah.
And that's saying a lot. Well done, founders.
Yeah.
Well done.
For sure.
The other Mas Agave, you can definitely taste the tequila more.
Yeah.
So then it was more tart.
Yeah.
This is solid.
Yeah, this is amazing. There's
Yeah.
a lot of residual sweetness that makes it.
Yeah.
Like so it's tart, but it's not overwhelmingly tart.
Yeah.
It doesn't like get you on the back end right there. It's
Yeah.
got great grapefruit flavor.
Yeah.
If
So-
I could, without blowing it up, I'd probably like blend it with ice and make it like a frozen margarita
Oh, God.
drink on the. I would be dope.
Yeah.
Just
In a
like-
hammock.
Yep.
and a hammock.
So
Good breakfast beer. You know.
Right.
Mac
Nice.
says, I love the idea of aging in mead barrels, honestly.
Oh, yeah.
So, it kind of, how do people choose what barrels to use, and what's the difference between a mead barrel? What are you going to get out of a mead barrel versus a whiskey barrel or a tequila barrel or bourbon barrel or a wine barrel, which we're going to taste a little bit later?
Yeah, those are great questions. So it's all like the base spirit. So whatever the base is that's in there, you want to take that into account. Whether it's wine, whiskey, or mead. Was it Renhouse that did the mead?
Yeah,
I think it was barrel
Superstition.
fermented actually,
Oh.
which is a different thing, which you can get into later.
Yeah.
But you kind of want to take your own thought and sensory image of what that spirit is and drink it. When we did the Paul Hobbs wine barrel stuff, we got wine from those barrels and did just sensory on the wine themselves, and then kind of backed into what beer would be good to highlight those flavors. You want to build a beer around that you're going to barrel age, the barrel that it's going to go into. So wine barrels typically are French oak for the most part. They're super lightly toasted. French oak is air dried for 2 years. So it's like got this like natural element to it, and then it's oak toasted over an oak fire. Whereas like American oak for your bourbons and things like that, they're kiln dried, and they're usually like gas charred on the inside. So you get this more robust flavor profile. So if you're wanting to do like a light beer, you probably want to go with a wine barrel. If you want like a big, heavy, dark beer, it's going to stand up a little bit more to the bourbon barrel and the American oak. Mead is really cool. Superstition's doing some just wild, like not wild in the wild sense, but like really cool, different stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Great.
I've never used any of their barrels personally. Their meads are awesome though, and I know that Preston and Luke and those guys have that at Ren. So I never got to try the one that they did that was fermented, I believe, in the barrels. But mead is just a completely different beast altogether. You have a lot more sweetness that's involved, and depending on what they're adding to it as well, you're going to pull out those different flavors. So choosing the barrel and like what the initial spirit was are really important, because that's going to be imparting a significant amount of character and flavor and aroma to what the beer is that you're putting in there. So.
Yeah. So using the same barrel how many times? Yeah. So Andrew, Tagine rim for the grapefruit.
Oh,
That's what he's
Tahine
recommending.
rim,
That's
I love
Andrew
it.
from Founders. So
Yeah, that would get
Very
dangerous
cool.
real quick.
yeah.
Ooh. Yeah.
How many times can you use a barrel?
So it depends on the barrel, depends on the beer that you've put through it.
Okay.
So for us, we have 2 Paul Hobbs wine barrels. Both of those, were freshly emptied when we got them, and we put 2 beers through them. I wouldn't do another one after that. I think
Okay.
we've gotten what we wanted out of it. But again, that's French oak, pretty light, and I think we've extracted maximum, flavor profile from it.
Cool.
However, we did get some from Hamilton Distillery down in Tucson for like whiskey Delbach.
Nice.
That one, they use the smaller barrels, the 30-gallon barrels, so it's a lot more surface contact. So they age quicker.
Okay.
So the smaller the barrel, the faster it's going to impart the flavor profile. Whereas the
just
wine
gonna
barrels are
ask that.
60
You
gallons,
answered
and
it.
then bourbons are 53.
Okay.
So they're all different sizes. But we used the Hamilton ones twice as well. They have a very robust flavor profile behind them. The first one was noticeably smoky, which was the Monarch that we did, which is a Belgian blonde
Yeah.
with mesquite flower honey. And we can try that one later as well. And then the Imperial Coffee Stout that we did in that barrel, you'll notice it's smoky, but it's not nearly as smoky as the Monarch. So, you just you can reuse them as many times as you feel comfortable, but there's a point of diminishing returns is like what you're going to get
You're
out.
not going to pull as much out
Correct,
of the
yeah.
barrel.
So
Yeah.
like that coffee stout we aged for 13 months.
So that's something I want to touch on when we get to it. If the length of the aging.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Matt has a question. It says, "What makes stouts and porters more popular to barrel age rather than things like lagers and IPAs?"
Yeah, that's a really good question. So typically when you're going to decide to put something in barrels, you can put whatever you want in the barrels, but generally speaking, you want a lower IBU beer, typically a higher alcohol to hold up to the aging process, the length of time. But if you do an IPA in a barrel, it's going to sit there and it's purposely oxidizing, right? Like over months, even if it's only 3 months, and it's sitting at a warm temperature.
Right there. Just stop there. There you go, Matt.
Yeah, that's it. Oxygen is really bad. Don't put an IPA in a barrel. It's not going to give you what you want. It's going to get muted and bad. And same thing with for lagers. Typically, you're not brewing. I think the highest ABV lager I've done was at Southern Tier, and it was 9%. But still, like most lagers, 5, 4, 3% ish. You're not going to get a lot out of it. It's going to dominate the beer itself. So that's why those beers are typically better. Higher ABV. Color doesn't really matter in the point of the Masagave or the beers that we've done in the past, the Bee's Knees and the Monarch, but low IBUs, more dextrins in there, so more residual sugar, which is why I think you were able to appreciate that sour that goes a little bit more.
Sure.
That adds a mouthfeel to help balance out some of those harsher flavors that the barrel can have.
Yeah. One more question, and then we'll get on to the next beer there. Is there pressure to nail that first barrel use? Have you ever blown one?
Oh.
That's a yes.
That's thankfully no.
No?
But
Oh.
I'm afraid to knock on wood. Again, like my OCD, my process, I really try very hard. So if at any point I think it's compromised, I wouldn't do it. I just any sort of corner cutting, even if it's in my own head, I just say no. You have to get this through. Do every step that you possibly can, and then just monitor it throughout. You can do microbial plating on it to make sure it's fine, but it's all sensorial for the most part. So there is a ton of pressure when you get a barrel in, but also your biggest thing is to not panic and don't be super freaked out, because sometimes just let it go a little longer and it'll kind of correct itself. So patience is like the number one thing.
Okay.
Patience over pressure.
Yeah.
It was really interesting with, I think it was the Kohi, trying it over month 4, month 6, month 8, especially for myself, who's I think only ever had like a final barrel aged beer, being able to see those differences. It was insane. Initially I was like, this is the smokiest thing ever, and he was like, just give it some time, and then it really leveled out and it was awesome. It was really cool to see. And all 4 of the barrels that we used the 2 barrels that we used for the Kohi all imparted different flavors. Some were more oaky, some were smoky. That's why we blended them together, so that you got a nice balanced thing, as opposed to a smoke bomb in one and then really vanilla oaky on the other. It was really cool to learn that aspect.
Excellent. Well, let's move into the next one. This one I pulled out of my my personal stash. This was released just a couple weeks.
Getting into the vault.
couple weeks ago, not too long, by the shop down in Tempe.
It's a cool
Their labels are great.
Yeah,
it's called Coconut, or this is not Coconut. The Cosmic Isolationist. So they
It's
released.
appropriate for right now.
Yeah, they released a couple. Coconut Isolationist was the one before this. So I'm just going to read directly from the label: Imperial Stout with banana, coffee, hazelnut, peanuts, and chocolate.
I had a feeling it was
Hell
going to have
yes.
banana in it because that is
Hell
you
yes.
100%.
Yes.
Anytime something comes through, it's like, oh, it has notes of banana and
What was,
chocolate.
what
It's
was
like,
the one Ryan House, the split or whatever?
Oh, well, they had two of them: banana split and it was banana stand, and then they had.
What was the one that we had?
It was
the-
banana split.
Yeah.
Yeah, banana split and banana
Legit,
stand.
just
Yeah.
like a
Yes.
chocolate banana. Like,
Oh.
that
well,
was
we
nice.
did at the Pint. We did a couple years ago. We did a collaboration with 8-Bit.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
As well, and it was a chocolate banana. And God, what was the name? It was very like Donkey Kong inspired. You know, 'cause all their
Secret level
stuff-
stout.
yeah,
Secret
yeah,
level
yeah.
stout. Secret level stout.
Nintendo.
Yeah.
That's all I could picture was like Donkey Kong. Like,
Yeah.
we're
Yeah.
Doing things. I'm excited. This one, yeah, we don't know too
Is it
much.
peanuts and hazelnut?
Yeah. Yeah, that's got a lot. Yeah, you can definitely smell the peanuts in that. Banana.
That's the first thing I got.
What's the base beer?
Imperial Stout. So, the shop always has random, weird, unrelated quotes on their labels. Just said, roads. Where we're going, we don't need roads.
Oh, from
We're
Back to the
going, we
Future.
don't need
Back to the
roads.
Future.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh,
It's just a
that's
Back to the
awesome.
Future. They always have movie quotes. It's-
Brilliant
or
idea,
show-
actually.
show- It's just, they're random, just super random, but
Yeah.
always awesome.
What's the ABV on that?
A lot.
A lot. which
It's
is
very
a
smooth.
lot.
Yeah, it's
11%.
Yeah, I had and like there's
Oh,
something
man.
that's like dangerously smooth,
mhm.
and those flavors are all very well balanced.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
not one dominates the other. Like there's a lot of stuff
Yeah,
in
I
there.
was
There
gonna
is,
say
but
that. I'm like,
it's-
it's like they step by step kind of
Yeah.
come forward.
Yeah.
Which is
Yeah, nothing sticks
Rare.
out too much.
Yeah, you know, like whenever like at least me personally, when you read like a label and you hear like all these different things, it's like ooh, you never know like can
Yeah.
one take over the other one? And those guys are awesome at the shop, like, but it just you never get you're like oh, like is it going to be a lot of this or the other one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I mean, it's
Yeah.
just like it's almost like you're eating like a sundae, and like all the flavors are coming together. at
yeah.
once.
No, this
But it's a
is-
light. It's not heavy.
The banana.
No, it's not as
seems
thick
to-
as some.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
for
feel
sure.
like the banana and the hazelnut seem to linger a little bit longer
Yeah,
for
they-
me than anything else. Like the just after.
I get the peanuts. I get the peanuts.
Yeah, I get
I-
the peanut. I don't get the banana at all, but that's what's cool is like everybody pulls out different aspects.
I get
Yeah.
a tiny bit
You
of
know?
the banana.
And
Tiny
it's
bit of
like
the banana.
just underlying, kind of like a
Yeah.
banana sweetness, almost
Yeah.
like an
Almost tastes
overripe.
like a
banana.
chocolate.
Is it available at the
To
pint?
me at the end.
No, Orlando. I wish it was, man. I wish it was. That was a shop only thing, and that was a small release. I was fortunate enough to get a couple bottles.
This is why you have to come do beer talks with us because then you get to drink out of
Yeah.
Justin's vault and all of the.
I am
random
happy
beers.
to
Definitely not
happy
mad
to bust
about
open
that
a
at all, yeah.
vault for anybody, just about honestly.
Love it.
That's
That is
really cool,
delicious.
yeah.
That to me kind of leaves room to like put a scoop of ice cream in it, like, have,
Oh,
like do a beer flow,
absolutely.
have something just.
Have you guys done any kind of that kind of stuff? Any beer floats or?
Early on, when Tammy was here, you know, she did the beer ice creams.
Yes,
which
that's
was really
right.
awesome. Yeah,
That's right.
And
What?
she kept up with like six different ones at any given time, which is really hard to do. So
Yeah, that's
Um,
right.
Pairing with our 6 core beers,
Pairing them as well.
which
Yeah, that's
was
amazing.
just like all over the place.
it was cool.
Yeah,
That was on a
that
sugar
awesome.
cookie, so like as it melted, it was good.
Well,
Yeah,
you-
it was super good.
Dustin mentioned it earlier. He used to work for Southern Tier, and they, oh my God, stuff. They're food beers and you call them food beers, pastries beer. What do you call
They're
them?
the Blackwater series or pastry stouts. Or,
Pastry stouts, but like they got the cinnamon roll, which is my favorite.
Yeah.
It was. What do you call them? You call them food beers? I call them
Food
food
beers, yeah, you can-
Okay. All right. So I'm not
There's fruit
complaining.
Those were always the
beers
ones
and
that were
there's
very
food beers.
difficult.
Fruit
to-
and food beers.
Yeah.
Like
Fruit
you did
and
say.
fruit beer. That's gonna be harder to
Yeah.
say later.
Give us an hour.
Ooh.
Food and fruit.
Those were the hardest ones always to come up with. Like, how do you get that flavor profile in there? Because, like, it's true for, I'm sure, most breweries, you know, even for us, it was always, it's a marketing thing first of this is a cool idea or this is a cool name. How do you back a beer into that? And then how do you
Yeah.
also make it able to
Sure.
produce on a grand scale,
Yeah.
Massive scale.
So I'm thankful that we're at the size that we are now. There was a lot of stress and a lot of fun stress, but it was always, you're like, oh man, how do you creme brulee and all those things.
Creme
Like,
brulee,
those
yeah.
are, but those are
It's a lot of pressure.
favorites. Yeah, that's a lot of pressure.
Yeah. That's
Going back to something you had mentioned about, being patient with the barrels and stuff and tasting them over time and like noting different things. Is there do you find that there's like a set sort of guideline where you're like, okay, it's about this time that every beer turns out great, or is it different for every single one? Is there some that after 4 months you're like, yep, this is great? It's 2 years before you like it. Like, at what point do you taste it and go, that was what I was going for? Like,
when it tastes like that's what you were going for.
okay, I know. I'm just trying to think about a different way to word it, but
it's a great point. So like,
thoughts.
you know, even some friends of ours, like Benny at Russian River and Brindleson at Firestone Water, like there's, you know, you don't know. Like anyone that claims to be an expert in barrels is, can we swear on you?
Yeah.
Yes.
Full of shit.
Yeah.
Like you're not like you're just.
I think
trusting.
Brian said fuck 3 times
Yeah.
last week. It's fine.
But yeah, that's, you know, nobody's an expert in it. You're basically relying on the mystery of the barrel. You can do just like brewing. You're gonna, you know, set everything up, set the groundwork up, let the yeast do its work. You're trusting this living organism to do its thing. You're gonna do the majority of the work, but it's gonna take off from there. The barrel is kind of similar. You know, you're gonna do as much prep as you can to that barrel and to the beer. But there's going to be some really cool like chemical composition that happens inside that barrel that you have no control over, and you have to be okay with.
Sure.
And you know, there are some like rough guidelines. You know, we were talking about the different sizes of barrels. So the 30-gallon, you know, ones, maybe 3 months you'll get a really strong, you know, presence of the barrel, flavor and aroma.
Okay.
But there's no rule of thumb. You know, like Mike was saying, we tasted those early on, and it was like too intense and smoky. But like let it keep going, and eventually those chemical compounds mellow out, whether oxidize or, you know, whatever the case is, you know, depending on what you're looking for. So there is no set time. If anyone tells you different, they're purely making that up. It's sensorial, and it's exactly like when you taste it and you say, this is what I want this beer to be, that's when you knock it out.
So I see some
That was hair.
that are aged for 3 months in a barrel, up to like 2 years in a barrel.
Sure.
My personal experience is something that's aged 18 months to 2 years or something seems to be really boozy.
For sure.
And is that, and maybe not so much in the 3 months one, is that just because of it's soaking in all that barrel?
Yeah, it's soaking in the
characteristics?
barrel, but you're also going to get like, you know, that, what they call it, the angel share, you know, it evaporates off and goes back into the barrel. You know, it's literally going to condense and concentrate because it's going to evaporate off. Some of that water that's in that liquid in the beer is going to go away. So you're getting a stronger beer by itself, but also typically the ones that are aged 3 months versus the ones that are 18 months or 2 years, they're probably going to have a lower starting ABV at the start, because you're not going to probably put a super low ABV beer into a barrel and let it go for 2 years, because you would just be tasting the inside of that barrel probably.
Yeah.
Okay.
So those two things probably hand in hand. It's
Okay.
literally getting
Yeah,
more
that
concentrated,
makes
but
sense.
also it's probably starting.
Yeah, makes sense.
That would
for
be
sure.
kind of, that was something I was curious about, was that just because you were talking about tasting stuff that in the beginning was so much, and then over time it mellows out. It's like, is there ever a point in time where you've got something in a barrel that you're noticing all these things, and then all of a sudden it kind of goes past
Dies.
it,
Sure.
where all of a sudden now there's nothing.
Yeah.
Like all that barrel flavor, excuse me, has sort of
Yeah.
gone away, and then you're like, crap, it was
Well,
too long.
you can get it to turn. The flavor might not go away, but you might get these other off flavors that might become more present. You know, typically the most common ones are, you know, soy sauce or like umami.
Yeah.
And what happens is that, again, there's yeast in there that at the start that was fine, but eventually it's starting to turn. It's oxidizing. It's like getting exposed to all the chemical compounds that are transitioning over time, and you get that. Soy sauce is the number one. Like, if you taste that a lot,
I've
like,
definitely
that's-
tasted that in a
Yeah.
beer before. I'm like, not my thing.
some people like purposely want it in there. I personally don't either. But that's where you're going to see like it turn a little bit, if you will. You could see it just ultimately like get infected if for whatever reason, because on tours our barrels are right out front there, and we have like a little barrier around them, and I try to cap the bungs as well. But anyone that has barrels out for the public to see, which is typically where you want them, for multiple reasons. One, you want them in the ambient environment, so they're getting the temperature differentials, but also you want people to see them and feel connected to them. But people also like to touch shit that they shouldn't. So, you know, they might like open up the bung, and as soon as they open up that bung, you know,
Something's getting in
or
it.
heaven forbid they stick their finger in there.
Oh,
You know, I've seen that happen.
Finger in the
yeah,
bung.
Yeah, don't.
So this is the base beer, sorry. So we should probably have that before.
Sure.
we
Oh,
have-
yeah, let's
Ooh,
do it.
yeah, this
yeah,
is going to be
This is the
I love this beer.
Kohi, yeah.
This is one of my. I think this is my favorite beer you guys make. In general. I'm pretty sure this is.
Yeah, so this is
This
our,
is Moot Point.
Oh, Moot Point, yeah.
I think Moot Point actually, but this is number 2.
it's cool that we still have this one. Obviously with all the stuff going on, we're not doing nearly as much, draft beer sales, because we miss the patrons in the bar.
Yeah.
So normally this one would be gone by now. I think we have a couple of kegs left of it. So it works out really to our benefit now. But
We're all over.
Literally, this is the only beer I had all day. I promise. There's a bunch of grain right here. A ton of balance.
he was crushing margaritas right now. But this is the base beer, and this is a beer that we did, for Veterans Day. So Mike being a veteran, we wanted to do something special for that. And
yeah, so basically, when we were trying to come up with the idea, we were like, all right, we got to do a beer that we want to release on the Marine Corps birthday, which is, it falls within a couple days of Veterans Day every year. It's November 10th. And I was like, he was like, so tell me, like, when you think, like, a beer for the Marines, but, like, veterans, like, what do you think? And I was like, you got, like, our two things are booze and coffee. Like, that's what we survive on for pretty much the entire time. So I was like, I was like, if we're gonna do, that's
MRE
secondary.
Up next.
Yeah,
All right,
my
guys.
God.
Collab time.
There's so many different MREs you could do. It'd just be ridiculous. But it was like, I was like, so if we're gonna do coffee, like, I want it to be, a coffee style. I love coffee styles. It's one of my favorite things. But it's got to be a high ABV one. Like, don't get me wrong, I like having like a nice 6 or 7, but like, to really, if we're representing, like, it's something that's gonna get after it. And in true, like, Dustin's style of brewing, I was like, why don't we do, like, it's so much coffee? And he's like, no, because if you do that, then you don't taste anything else of the stout. It's basically like drinking coffee beer, which is fine, but like, why don't we put it on the hot side? And therefore, it's going to be a much more complex beer. You're going to get notes of lemon that we get out of the style of
it's Ethiopian
Yorkshire bean. Yeah,
Nice.
like, I was like, that. Yeah, I trust you. Just get after it. And so, and his other style, besides doing nice balanced beers, is making it seem like it's non-alcoholic at all. Like, so if you drink this, it's like, I think it's like a 5%, 6%. That's a 11. 11-2.
11-2.
Nailed
Yeah.
11.
And by doing we did a couple like steeps with a local roaster down the street, Echo Coffee at 68th and Thomas, because when we were opening up, we didn't have Wi-Fi here, of course, and we were doing the demo and all that stuff. We had to have meetings somewhere that looked nice. So it's right down the street, more or less. They had coffee, and then TT Roadhouse is right across the street. So
Love that
if it transitioned from all right, we're done with this meeting, we could really use a beer, we'll just walk across the street.
Every single time.
Every time.
Every
So naturally, when we were going to do a coffee beer, which was, I think it was like October that we brewed it, and we opened in July. So we went back to Echo, and we're like, hey, can you guys do this? They have their little roaster right there in house, and so he hooked it up. He is so passionate about coffee, like we are for beers. So he takes it, he roasts it, so it has like the proper 2-day cool down period. So he roasts it on like a Wednesday or Thursday, and we always brew it with like, we bring in veterans and have them hands on a
so
Saturday.
cool.
And so like he grinds it fresh on that Saturday morning for us, and then either we pick it up or he delivers it, and it's awesome. Yeah.
Awesome.
So this is the base beer for the two barrel aged ones.
Yeah.
Yeah, so let's get into those. So we got the Duke Cellar Reserve. First of all, we know the Cohee is the base.
Yep.
I had these back in beer school for the first time.
Yeah.
Beer school was
That was the
phenomenal.
first sneak peek that anyone got of them.
Yeah.
Nice.
Oh man. So normally I'm a whiskey, bourbon, barrel aged. Don't typically like the wine barrel aged, tequila barrel aged. Good job on the Muscave. But this Pinot Noir barrel aged is supreme. I actually like it better than the whiskey.
I'm the same way.
Which is crazy. Which is
I
absolutely
prefer
crazy.
the wine ones, typically.
It's so. What might have you have done differently compared to some of these other ones that I just really don't like?
Nothing. It's the barrel. 100% is that barrel. This is the base beer that you're having. You've had it before. It's that one was the second use one. So we had done the bee's knees previously in that, which was a Belgian blonde. But when I do the barrel preparation, I bring it in. We get wet barrels, but I don't just go right in there. That's an OCD thing. I like to know, controlled what I'm going into. We don't steam them either right away because steam is super volatile and it can kick out any potentially really good aromatics. But we use hot water and then flush it, and then we use ozonated water,
Okay.
which will kill any bad bugs that might be living in there. And so they've been flushed once, and then you're relying on the liquid, in this case the wine, that's still trapped in those staves. And it was so subtle, and it took that 13-month point where all of a sudden the oxidation started happening within the wood, where it was converting certain like flavor elements into this almost cherry-like. So it wasn't even wine anymore; it was like dark chocolate and cherries.
Interesting.
And that's where I think the magic happened. And I didn't do it; that was the barrel.
Uh,
That was just me
Yeah.
like trusting it, and just
Yeah.
we kept pulling samples and being like, "It's not there yet. It's not there yet." And when that happened, it was like, "Hell yeah,
Cool.
Yeah.
this is what's happening."
So I mean, I've
That's
obviously
awesome.
had this before, but I'm so happy to revisit this, and I am very curious. You have not had this, correct?
No, I haven't. I
I'm
haven't.
very
had it.
curious to what you think of the wine barrel stuff.
And I tend to appreciate more, I think, the wine barrel, different beers that I've had before. Sometimes the whiskey and the bourbon can be a little too boozy for me.
Sure, for
that
sure.
it's like, I'd rather just do a shot of whiskey
Yeah.
than like drink this oily sort of texture, and then it's
Yeah.
just very like mouth fire. So it can be a little bit too much for me. But a lot of like we did. Gosh, it wasn't Fires. Oh, it was Huss and Great Divide had done a collaboration, and it was a porter
Yes.
a couple of years back, and we actually
Hut-
It was something
Gosh,
really cool.
Divide and
Divide
divide
and-
and
Divide and Hustle.
Divide and
Divide and
Hustle.
Yeah,
Hustle.
I was
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
God, I
yeah,
gotta
yes.
get it. It's gonna be feel
Yeah.
really bad. And we actually had the privilege to, or I guess the luxury to have all 5 that they had done in different barrels, and they did it in a
Oh,
Scotch
cool.
barrel, tequila, red wine. They
Okay.
did whiskey and Scotch. Did I already say Scotch?
Scotch.
That one.
That was Scotch.
Ooh, that was Scotch.
That was
That was like
Scotch.
straight up Anchorman episode. It was gnarly, but the red wine barrel one that they
That
did
was the one. Yeah.
that was my favorite.
That's red wine is really cool, but it's such a broad category. You can get some really crazy red wines, and for us, this is a Pinot Noir. Pinot Noir is got some really great expressions to it, and Paul Hobbs, which is a winery in California. They call him like the Steve Jobs of the Russian River Valley.
Okay.
He's very like inventive in what he's doing, and it's cool because like he's doing something that like just like this right now at the same time.
Oh,
So I was like,
okay.
oh, cool, we should like shoot him a message, but obviously we're doing the same thing. So
Yeah.
he's probably busy.
He can watch it later.
But his Pinot Noirs are really solid. They're just great expressions of the style, and really clean and subtle. So for us, it was like a win-win. Putting our beer in that barrel.
So that's probably where a lot of it is depending on which
Yeah, I guess.
wine.
100%.
That you get different things. Because I noticed, like different ones that I've read, they might just say like a red wine barrel, and that's probably more just like a lot of blends and things like that. And some are very specific that they used a Cab, they used a Pinot.
Yeah.
They want you to know it's this barrel from this vineyard.
Yeah.
Totally.
And I think that makes a lot of difference.
It does, especially going back to what we were talking about before. Like, how do you pick the barrel, or how do you know what you're gonna the style and things like that. And for us, we were really fortunate. It was the first year that we had opened with JW Marriott and Desert Ridge, and Paul Hobbs makes their house wines.
Oh wow.
And so, that's where those barrels came from. And he comes out there once a quarter and checks on it. So, we had the connection through a guy named Travis, who's I think still in the company, but in a different state, who connected us. We did the beer with them. That was the Bee's Knees. And so that's where those barrels came from. So we knew where they came from. We were able to get bottles that were from those barrels, which is a big deal. And the same thing is true, actually, for the Whiskey Delbach, the Hamilton. So Nathan, their master distiller, is awesome. I will never forget this because I went down there. He's like, hey, man, I just dumped these barrels. We bottled them. And it was January 1st. So as you can imagine, New Year's Eve, was drinking pretty heavily.
Yeah.
Super hungover. There were a few people that were like, oh, I'm going to go down with you in the morning. And I'm like, cool, I'm leaving at this time. I have to. And nobody showed up. So it was just me driving down there. I get down to Tucson, and of course Nathan's there checking on some stuff, and they have a distillery cat that's running around, and we hung out. And what they're doing down there is amazing. They're malting all their grain on site, and just doing some really killer spirits down there. But it was cool because got bottles, the same thing from those barrels, and they were they were only empty for 3 days.
Oh, it's awesome.
And so
Wow.
it's always fun to rock the barrel upside down and get the little bit out and, for sensory purposes.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah.
Q&A, right?
Yeah.
Do you find so? Well, and I'm
Q&A.
sure the answer. I'm sure I know the answer to this, but do you find that the timeline of when you get the barrel of like how soon it was emptied, versus like it's been sitting around for a while and there hasn't been wine in or there hasn't been whiskey in it for a month? Do you notice that there's differences
Definitely
in it for sure?
And I think to your point, like when you were talking about how some people just reference like the type of wine that it was and nothing else, because the market for secondary barrels for breweries is wide open, but you never know who you're getting it from, and a lot of times these brokers are just buying whatever they can and selling it to you at sometimes a crazy price for what the barrel is.
Yeah.
So if you don't actually, like my recommendation, and it's a luxury to be able to do it, especially in the state where you have a distiller that's doing it, or just in California where you know the producer. But if you can get eyes on that barrel before you buy it, that's a huge deal, because there's different things to look for. One is how long has it been sitting empty. 2 months or more, you're going to start to see some pretty iffy things where you're not going to be able to use it quite as well.
Yeah.
The staves shrink up a little bit. Another thing to look for is like the width of the staves and how many staves are within that barrel. Typically, you can get like an overstaved barrel, which is just really translates to shitty quality wood, so they ended up doing a bunch of staves in there. So you probably want to stay away from those. But literally physically seeing that barrel can tell you so much. And popping the bung and flashlight down in there and checking out what the char is, if there's anything funky in there, and is there any residual wetness, because some barrels you can rehydrate, some you can't. But wood is, obviously it's the number one thing, because that's imparting so many different elements, both flavor and aromatic. Vanilla, coconut, whatever, wine, whatever it is. So,
Yeah.
Awesome.
No, and that brings up, I think about that a lot too, like the whole concept of different woods and everything too, is like that plays just as much of a role as far as like what's been in it, as well as the type of wood and everything. It's like when people barbecue or smoke and stuff
absolutely,
like
yeah.
that, it's that same kind of thought process.
yeah. And we usually do. We didn't do it this year. We just didn't have the time or the space to do it. But we do what's called the Autumn Oak Nut Brown, which is a nut brown ale that we do with muscovado sugar, and we actually do it as a stainless fermentation. But we hang the oak chips inside the fermenter, and then we fill up the fermenter right there. So, but we actually go through and we did some steeps with like different levels of toast and different types of woods. We use a French or American oak with a medium toast, and then we put that in there and we let it sit, and it ferments on there, and then it also ages on there, and then we rack it off. And that one tastes like, it's one of my favorite.
That's awesome. It's such a good one.
Matt, you're full of good questions. How about a barrel-aged Saison soon?
A barrel-aged Saison, that would be an interesting one. Is that, what she's having?
What she's having, yeah. It's in reference to what she's having.
That's great. That's a beer that that's my wife's brainchild. She's wanted to do something like that for a long time, and she just wants to highlight different women in the valley that are just doing something they're passionate about, not necessarily beer, but love beer. And so she, of course, made the first one, which is the Matcha Saison green tea.
Love that.
But yeah, a Saison in a barrel. I don't know if I would personally do a Saison in a barrel, because there's so many phenolic compounds that are dominant from a Saison yeast. So there's like clove and like spice notes that you get from a Saison. I feel like, and I don't know, like I've never done it, but I feel like they would get muted really quickly.
Barrel-aged Saisons, but they're more sour.
Right.
Yeah.
You're not getting that.
You're not the true Saison.
note,
Yeah.
And so, but what might be interesting is to maybe do the fermentation on chips, kind of like the nut brown that we were just talking about, because it's a different component, like aging it in wood barrels versus fermenting on the chips or the wood, even in a barrel, is different. Like Union Jack, or the double barrel Union Jack, like that's fermented in barrels,
Interesting, yeah.
And so you're getting like this whole like action in there. The yeast are fermenting on the chips, so you're getting this different like flavor profile altogether. So that might be kind of cool.
Yeah, there you go, Matt. You might get it, buddy.
Autumn Oak was one of my favorites.
Autumn Oak was one of my faves.
Oh,
Bring
that's
it back.
That's amazing.
This is fabulous. You still get so much of the coffee and everything too. I want.
Yeah.
So what's
Correct.
interesting
It's
is,
beautiful.
well, first of all, we're out of glasses, but so we're gonna go back. But so you must finish your
go back,
Cohees,
sorry.
guy. You have to finish your Cohee because we're gonna go back to the Cohee.
That's fair. We can go back in
Oh,
there.
dang.
I know,
Oh
right?
God, I know. And I want to make sure too before we get too long on time.
Okay.
I mean,
28.
okay.
Not too bad.
Perfect.
Oh, is there a time limit on this?
No,
not really.
there's
Nobody
no
told
time
me.
limit.
Oh, you
I
having
just,
fun, guys? Come on, come on.
We
We're
got
still getting
six,
questions.
midnight we shut down.
Yeah, when we're all like
Still got 2 more hours, guys.
doing this, then
Oh,
we'll be
this is
fine.
like the backdrop in here. So this is all Jesse Perry's artwork
Yes,
behind us.
Jesse,
So
I love him.
We use local artists, of course, like for both the mural, but he does a lot of our can art as well.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Very
he's
cool.
basically part of the Helio family, and
Yeah.
a lot of the murals around downtown Phoenix, that's him. So I was looking here and didn't even realize that we're
Yeah.
behind it. So.
Quit looking at yourself, man.
So this is cool.
So yeah, if you go back, like going from the Pinot Noir to the Cohee, back, it's really cool.
nuts,
It's
isn't it?
really
Yeah.
cool.
I just did. I was like, oh, this is like so. The base beer is so
Yeah,
different.
it's crazy. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely a different flavors come out of it.
Yeah,
It's-
right on.
That was really cool.
Yeah, it was bouncing back and forth and getting back into the banana and peanut one too.
So it's funny. My last sip of the shop beer, I definitely got the banana
Yeah.
as it opened up. I don't know if you guys got it
I
or
did-
not,
yeah, yeah.
but.
I drank it too fast.
Well,
It's really
there's
good.
still- There's still some more there,
All
my
right,
friend.
all
Once you get to this,
Yeah,
one.
we
So that's one thing that I never really appreciated it, honestly, until recently. Barrel aged stouts have always been my thing. But I would always on mic, I'm just slamming the shit out of them.
Yeah.
You let it sit, and then the flavors really come out.
It's
And,
crazy.
I've always heard that. I'm like, it's warm beer, and I like my cold beer, But it's really crazy. Recently, a Tombstone beer is the I'm Your Hazelnut.
Oh, yeah,
I don't know
yeah.
if you guys had that.
I haven't
or not.
had it yet, but
That
it
was
looks good.
that was the biggest change from pour to a half hour later. It was amazing.
Yeah.
At first, you really couldn't taste the hazelnut.
Yep.
Half hour later, it was beautiful.
Yeah.
It was absolutely beautiful. And it's why. What's as it warms up? Explain what's going on.
Yes, that's a great point. It's something that anytime we do sensory or we do beer dinners or anything like that, I always go over the tasting process and we touch on this exact thing. So it's not so much, different aromatics and volatile compounds are getting activated as the beer warms up, but more importantly, your mouth is getting acclimated to the temperature of that beer. So when you first crack it open, if you pull it out of your fridge, which hopefully is cold, your mouth is 98.6 degrees. That temperature differential, when you take a sip, is going to shock your palate. Like you're going to be like, all right, I taste some things, but you're not getting the majority of it. So as your mouth kind of like acclimates to that coolness, more of your taste buds are like able to, pick up and perceive certain flavor profiles. But also as the beer warms up itself, it's releasing and giving off some of these like volatile aromatics, as it sits there and heats up. So heat is energy, it's heating up, it's like giving off this really cool expression. So that's
Yeah.
a really great point. And
Yeah.
for these beers especially, we even had talked about it before we started. It's like we can almost pull these out now and just let them sit
Yeah.
here in the
Yeah,
the
let 'em
room,
hang out.
Yeah.
and they'll be so much better.
Yeah. Yeah.
But a lot of people do have that same mentality of like, I want my beer cold. It's like, cool, you're missing out on so much.
Yeah.
It's actually really cool with that because it makes me think of the first Lord Rupert.
Oh, yeah.
So with an IPA, similar thing. We used I forget what hop we used, but it was like candied pineapple and coconut. But like as you drank, you got like if I remember correctly, it was pineapple in the beginning and then coconut like the second half as it warmed up. And it was also interesting, like again, not knowing all this stuff. It was like I think it was the first week. He goes, hey, so I adjusted the temperature of our walk-in because it was at like 36 or something, or it was like 35 or 30. It was a little bit colder, and he goes, I'm just not getting the flavor profiles coming out of the beers like on the first couple sips because it's taking a little bit to warm up, and I want that initial like, okay, like here we go, that sort of thing. And I was like, holy crap, like the things I would never in
Yeah.
a million years have thought about. It was really cool to like see him do those sort of things and understand the customer perspective of like how it changes as it goes.
Yeah, it's really, and just even well, we talked about the time and we've talked about the temperature and everything, but I find with some of these amazing IPAs, these amazing hazy IPAs, they come off in the first couple of days. They get in the store and I crack it, I try it. I'm like, wow, this is really good. But then like 2 weeks later, it's that much better, and it's amazing. Time, temperature, all that kind of stuff affects things. Obviously, IPAs that curve.
There's
a peak.
I think 2 weeks is like that.
Yeah.
There is a drop off.
But again, it's as I get more and more into this kind of stuff, you definitely recognize that a little bit more.
Absolutely.
Sure.
Like, that's one of those things. It's like fun to talk to people about. It's like as you're developing your palate, like I didn't like Brussels sprouts when I was a kid, but I love them now. And it's like, and beer is kind of like is very culinary in a sense.
Do not compare beer to Brussels sprouts.
Sorry, I didn't mean to do that.
Not for him. I get what you're saying.
No, I know.
Right, but like as your palate expands and as you dive into it, my favorite thing usually is talking to people, when folks are in, is like, hey, I don't like this style of beer. Like, well, have you had it? Have you been exposed to it? Okay, no. Well, let's just like walk through it. There's no wrong answers with beer. It's not to like bash the wine community, but typically you get a lot of like folks in that sector that are like, oh, you need to taste X, Y, and Z. It's like, well, with beer, it's whatever you're tasting.
Yeah.
It's more welcoming. It's like just develop your own profile.
Yeah.
Now all of a sudden you get somebody that's like, our amber is a great example. I think when we first opened, we didn't have a wine license or a liquor license. We were just beer, and so the people that were coming in and like, I don't like beer, and we had the Blackberry Blonde has always been one of our beers from day 2. But you would think that might be the first progression, maybe to someone who doesn't like beer. But it's like, try the amber. There's these like great caramel notes and grapefruit notes, and like that to wine drinkers was the number one beer that we saw like rise to the top, which is wild. But it's like just give it a chance, try it, like explore your palate, because your palate's probably much different, more targeted towards fruity esters, maybe some dryness and some bitterness depending on what wine you like. And so they were able to just find similarities in this beer that if you asked me, I never would have guessed that in a million years. Yeah. But just to watch that happen was really cool. And now you're expanding somebody's whole portfolio of what they might try when they're out.
Totally.
Nice.
Very
And
cool.
that's why not to like blow smoke, but I love your guys' spot because it's always something different. You guys have so many different beers on tap, and when we go in there, we don't get a chance very often, but when we do, it's like, hell yeah, I want to try that one.
Oh, it always
Cool.
leads
Well,
to-
thank you.
It's never a one beer visit. It's usually like, all right, here we go.
All right, I'm going to Casual Pint next month to start training, babe.
Oh, baby. Here we
It's all
go.
sensory.
Take the Uber.
It's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh no. As we talk about the next one, so it's the same base beer, but we did it in whiskey barrels,
Yep.
right?
The dough
And this
pot,
one.
yep.
To note some kind of different things. Like I already just in the first sip, I get more of the original coffee
Yeah.
in the wine than I do in the whiskey.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that was intentional or not, but that's just something I noticed. And it's a little bit creamier for mouthfeel wise is for me, at least. But I really want to touch on this because this is something we get all the time, is aging at home.
Oh, yeah.
So
Oh, boy.
hey, I'm gonna go buy this barrel aged beer. How long am I allowed to let it sit in my own home? Typically in a closet, in a pantry, because not everybody has 10 extra fridges or anything
course.
like that.
Sure.
Let's talk about that. Is what's appropriate to do, what's not. The difference is I've even seen on labels sometimes where they say, drink now. Yes, we barrel aged it. Please drink it right away. And then other ones that are like, hey, it's okay. How do you decide, like, as a consumer purchasing that, like, what's appropriate to barrel age yourself? What are you going to get out of it as far as doing it versus drinking it right away?
That's such a valid question, and probably one that people don't ask because maybe they're afraid to.
Or they think that
Or they-
IPA in the back of the closet's fine after
Oh
2
yeah,
years.
we were talking about that earlier. That's
Not
Yeah.
very sweet.
it tastes different.
Yeah.
Hey, I brought you a present. Here's a beer that I've held on to for 15 years.
I'm trying to get rid of it now. But yeah, that's a really good question. We we're again like very OCD with our process, so it depends on a number of things. The biggest one is oxygen or packaged oxygen that's in the bottle and in the liquid. Number one is don't lay it down like a wine bottle.
Okay.
So a lot of people do that purely because their refrigerator doesn't like it's not going to kill the beer, right? But it's going to drastically reduce the amount of time that you can age it, even if you do it appropriately. Because what you're doing, we don't have a closed bottle, but if you take a bottle and you tip it sideways versus up, the surface contact area of the open space in the bottle now becomes about like this long as opposed to like that much. Made you
Makes sense.
But so now like it's exposed to much more oxidation or potential oxidation, and so just that little bit, first and foremost, super easy to do if you have the room.
I need another barrel fridge.
I think it's wrong.
Not all of them. No, not at all.
But if they're also like, I mean, we do a really good job to try to eliminate the dissolved oxygen that's in the solution of the beer, so that's going to help. Darker beers are going to age longer, as long as they're not some super hopped beer, because the hops are what's going to oxidize first and just downgrade the shelf life. But high ABV, low IBU beers, typically something that you would put in a barrel, is going to have a longer shelf life, but keep it dark and keep it cold. It doesn't have to be 38 degrees or whatever your refrigerator is, but sub 55 if you can. That's what's best for it. And always listen to, if the brewer puts a label on there and says drink it now, just drink it now, because you're not doing anybody any favors. Don't trade for it later. Don't do anything else, because we see a lot of that that happens, and it's like, just enjoy the beer. A lot of work from our end goes into making sure that beer is best for you. And if we're telling you please drink it now, we're not trying to lead you astray. It's saying just this, we made this for you. We put so much effort into this. Please just listen to us.
Good advice.
For our beers, we Justin and Aaron, who are friends of ours, who also did the cocktails for us, the bottled cocktails. They're aging the Bee's Knees beer that we did in Chardonnay and Pinot Noir barrels, the Belgian blonde, 3 years ago. So they still have bottles of those. They're fine. We're like, hey, keep them cold, keep them dark. That's fine. And we still have some of those as well. And those are blondes, but they're also low IBU beers. And there's a lot of extra stuff going on there. So just know that it's going to change over time. Ask the staff at the brewery if you're buying it directly from the brewery, or ask staff at the bottle shop, and you guys hopefully can ask your reps. Don't be afraid to ask questions, because if you're buying the product, ask. Worst thing somebody says is, I don't know, let me find out.
Right.
Yeah.
Or reach out to the brewery.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, you have Facebook. You can just message the brewery and be like, hey, I bought this beer. How can I keep it for a while? Is it better? They'll let you know.
Yeah. One last thing. I know we're pushing time a little bit, but I want to get behind the label itself, the name and the label on these. On Duke.
Yeah. So Duke was our Great Dane English Mastiff mix. Had him for a little over 9 years, and he passed away. Had some cancer pop up, and it was really unexpected. We had just adopted another dog through a collaboration beer that we did with One Love Pitbull Foundation. So they got a couple months together.
Which is fantastic, by the way.
And just good people. And so we had a little tiny new pit bull, which was new to us, and this big Great Dane English Mastiff. And they were pretty good buddies. It was funny because the age difference was so different, and energy levels.
I love it when tiny and large dogs are best friends.
Yeah.
It's so cute.
So we had done the beer, for the One Love Foundation that had Max's likeness on it, which is the dog that we had gotten, and when Duke passed away, it was very emotional. He's our buddy, and we're like, we need to do something that's very true to him. He was a gentleman. He was so kind and sweet. Everyone loved him. So I'm like, let's do something really cool. So we did. There's a winery that does a foil backed label. So we contacted them, found out what that is. It's a little hard to read the words in the back, which we learned in retrospect because of the foil, and it's kind of small, but. It's just a little cheers to him. So it's called Duke Cellar Reserve. He was never a beer dog. Our dog before him was loved beer. Duke was more of I would never give him bourbon, but he loved to sniff the glass. So it's well, this makes sense. It's got a little whiskey boy. So
that's awesome.
So that's him on the front. And then we kept the same label, and then we just kind of a passport stamp in the corner, stamp which barrel it was from. So whether it's Pinot Noir or the whiskey double. So
cool.
Thank you for asking that.
Yeah, of course. Sorry, I mean it's to get a
No,
little
it's such
somber,
a-
but no,
yeah.
it's special. I know
It's a- yeah, it's
we
a
have
story.
the love of dogs,
Yeah.
you know, at Casual Pint too, and
Yeah,
One
Max
Love.
Max loves your spot.
Yeah,
Yes.
for sure. And one love and Mo.
Yeah.
Mo was a
Oh,
you know,
Mo
one-
was my
one of
regular
our-
for so
one of our
long.
regulars,
I loved that
before they
boy.
moved. So yeah, I just wanted to touch on that. Yusuf, hey, what's up, buddy? How you doing? Yeah, I think
Thank you.
I want to drink
for
a lot
all
more
of
off
this-
camera.
Oh, for
I know. I was
Yeah.
like, I don't want to
We're
get
gonna do all
wasted
right.
in front of
We're gonna do all right.
We still got a lot of these bottles left.
Definitely. By all means, please, send in questions if you have afterwards or anything so that we can reach out back to you guys, put them on our social media, answer them later. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you got to drink along, and if not, hopefully something piqued your interest that you want to go grab. These bottles you can only get here at Helio. We don't have them at the Pint, so come here, support local. They're open. You guys are still doing the carry out,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
right, we're not doing dine in at the moment.
Just had the barbecue burger.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome, guys.
Yeah.
Get
Yeah.
that to go.
Yeah, we got the hours on the website. That's all updated and everything like that. So
Wonderful.
And also just wanted to say thank you to you for putting us together
Yeah.
and you
Yeah.
for supporting it,
Of
because
course.
when you reached out, it was really cool, and this is like a new thing for us, right? It's like this virtual
Yeah.
connectivity
Oh,
with
yeah.
people, because we
Yeah.
miss people being in the brewery. And when you mentioned that you're doing it, and you did it with Brian, and it was like, this is awesome. Like, this is like the new norm, kind of, and stuff like this is so fun. And so, yeah, thank you guys for,
Yeah.
for doing what
Yeah.
you do.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And
Thank you
this
so
is,
much.
This is going to be, I think, pretty cool, because it's giving us a chance to connect with folks.
Cool.
Yes,
Very
thank
cool.
you. I know
Yeah.
this is our way of still acting like we get to drink with everybody. It's like little bits at a time.
I'm not
small-
drinking alone, I promise. I'm not.
yeah.
Right, I'm on camera drinking with all of you. It's
Yeah,
fun.
I'm watching somebody drink.
You're sitting in
me
your
alone.
bedroom watching, just like in the bed drinking a beer.
I need
I
this.
love
Empties all around you.
Cheers, everyone.
Cheers. Thank you
so
very much for joining
Thanks,
in.
guys.
Enjoy your beers.
Cheers.